believe they have the votes to impeach. Republican Senator Roy Blunt described how he thinks the Senate will react.
I think a lot depends on what happens in the House. I think you have to assume if it's essentially a partisan vote in the House, that sets the stage for the likely same kind of vote in the Senate. But let's see what the facts are.
Blunt on CBS's Face the Nation. The White House says U.S. troops will leave the region as Turkey prepares to invade northern Syria. Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham confirms U.S. forces will not be involved in the operation, but that still leaves questions over what will happen to the Kurdish fighters allied with the U.S.
The Kurds spent the past 4 years helping the United States fight ISIS, but still maintain tense relations with Turkey. This summer, Turkey and the United States agreed to create a safe zone for civilians in northern Syria. With millions still displaced following the defeat of ISIS and the ongoing Syrian civil war, the development did appear to be a positive sign for the warring region.
Fox's Trey Yingst. A car with 5 people inside plunged into a Delaware canal. Police say the 18-year-old driver managed to rescue a 16-year-old girl, but he died while trying to help the 3 other passengers, ages 6, 12, and 16. The youngest victim was not immediately found and remains unaccounted for. Authorities are investigating how the car ended up in the canal. Former President Jimmy Carter has a black eye and stitches after falling at his home in Georgia. He still managed to make it to a Habitat for Humanity event in Tennessee later in the day. America's listening to Fox News.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
North Korea pulls the plug on talks with the U.S., demanding the U.S. abandon its hostile policy against them.
Sunday, the North's foreign ministry issuing a statement blasting the U.S., accusing the U.S. of trying to mislead public opinion, spreading an ungrounded story about meeting again, having no will to improve relations, and abusing bilateral relations for partisan interest. The statement goes on, saying North Korea will not hold such sickening negotiations, claiming U.S. policy threatens their security, and they have no other option but nuclear weapons to cope with what they call a U.S. plot to invade the country. Ann Carrick, Fox News.
The United Auto Workers strike enters its 4th week, with union leaders saying General Motors isn't willing to fairly compensate workers, but GM says it's negotiating in good faith. 49,000 union members are on strike. The Joker laughs to a box office record.
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
The top earner at the box office this weekend, Warner Brothers' Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix. Domestically, Joker racked up over $93 million. Globally, Joker pulled in $234 million. In second place,
This is you and your parents. Aw, you have your mother's eyes.
the more family-oriented Abominable earned $12 million. In third place, Downton Abbey. Fourth, Jennifer Lopez's Hustlers. And in fifth place, It, Chapter 2. I'm Mike Piazza, Fox News.
NASCAR's Kyle Larson wins in Denver, breaking a 75-race winless drought.
It's going to be Kyle Larson who's going to give Chip Ganassi Racing their first run into the next round, the furthest they've ever gone. Larson wins at the Monster Mile.
A call on NBC Sports Network, Martin Truex Jr. coming in second place, followed by Alex Bowman and Kevin Harvick. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
I'm a working mom and could really use more hours in my day. Thankfully, my non-electric Kinetico water treatment system has simplified my life. It's easier to clean my home with Kinetico conditioned water. No more scrubbing tubs or wiping water spots. Cleaners work better and last longer. And all the Kinetico drinking water we want is right here. No more lugging home bottled water. All this, and I'm saving money too, thanks to Kinetico.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I might add to that, the right of the people to listen and comment to Tall Tales shall not be infringed either. Right, Real Joe Cruz?
Absolutely, sir.
Isn't that what you've been saying for the last couple of months? Yeah.
That's right, sir.
All right. Well, you know, as is our usual custom, I've got a little squib here on the first, as you were on the Second Amendment. And as is our usual custom, it gives me the opportunity to pick on a Democrat, which is kind of what Tall Tales is all about. Today, it's a certain Robert O'Rourke. It's Robert O'Rourke's turn in the barrel today. Robert O'Rourke would also like you to call him Beto, because he's attempting to appeal to the ethnic majority in his hometown of El Paso. So rather than refer to him as Robert or Bob or Bobby, he likes to be called Beto. You don't have to call, even though my name is Robert, I'll just stick with Bob. No Beto here. So here's what Beto says. Beto is almost a gift to the pro-gun side. He's been saying everything we've argued Democrats believe. Before, the only ones who would actually verbalize what we all knew were random people on social media who had no standing on the national stage. It was easy to dismiss those voices as irrelevant. Now, though, you've got a presidential candidate and former party golden boy saying the precise things we've been promised that no one wanted. O'Rourke's decision to actually say these things has somewhat torn the party asunder on the issue. It seems Beto O'Rourke's proposal to implement a mandatory buyback program for assault weapons ignited a split among 2020 Democrats at the Giffords March for Our Lives Gun Safety Forum on Wednesday. Here's what they're saying. We have a way sometimes as a party of getting caught. Just when we've amassed the discipline and the force to get something done right away, a shiny object makes it harder for us to focus. A shiny object. Buttigieg said this would be Mayor Pete of the metropolis of South Bend, Indiana. You know, if you could be mayor of South Bend, Indiana, no, it's just a small step from there to President of the United States. Kind of reminds me of my hometown. I spent some time in, of all places, Elkhorn. Yes, Elkhorn, like the horns on an elk. Elkhorn, Wisconsin, kind of a small town. If you want to know how small Elkhorn is, well, I'll tell you, both city limit signs are on the same post. Anyhow, back to Beto. I heard some of the comments made today on this stage, O'Rourke said when it was his term. Those who are worried about the polls or want to triangulate or talk to consultants or listen to focus groups, and I'm thinking about Mayor Pete on this one, who probably wants to get to the right place but is afraid of doing the right thing right now. There's a bit of a battle going on right now within the party based on O'Rourke's proposal. However, there's also the flip side of the coin. From the pro-gun side, it's quite clear that the Democrats are fully embracing their anti-gun side. It's gotten so bad, in fact, that a prominent pro-gun name argues that Beto's gun grab is the Democratic Party of today. So there's a real contest here to see who the looniest group can be that would be the face of the Democrat Party. For a while, it was the Squad, who was the face of the Democrat Party. That would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib. Let's see, what are the other two's names? Ilhan Omar, the representative from Somalia, and Ayana somebody or other. They are so far left, that they even eat with their left hand, even though they're right-handed. They sit there at the table and eat with their left hand because it would be too embarrassing to do anything at all that might suggest that they have a right side. So now apparently Beto is attempting to wrestle the face of the Democrat Party away from the Squad. More power to you, Beto. Okay, back to this article here. Nationally syndicated radio host and former spokesman of the National Rifle Association, Dana Lash, said on Thursday that former Vice President Joe Biden's proposed crackdown on assault-style weapons is the same as a 2020 Democrat presidential hopeful Beto O'Rourke. All their plans are essentially identical to Beto O'Rourke's. This is the Democrat Party now, Lash told Fox and Friends, disputing O'Rourke's claim that a majority of Americans agree with his position on the issue. Is Lash wrong? Not really. Almost all of them either include some variation of an assault weapon ban. Further, none of the leading candidates are arguing about the morality of such a ban and a buyback scheme. None are arguing that it's wrong or unconstitutional. At best, they're arguing that now is a bad time for such rhetoric. It's kind of like a political gaffe. A gaffe, and I'll get to this a little later on, a gaffe is when a politician accidentally says something in public that he really believes, even though he knows it's really bad politics. In other words, it's clear that none of them actually oppose the measure on the grounds of it being wrong, only that the timing is wrong. That's the problem for me. All the Democrats running are really saying is that they favor taking our guns away. They just don't want to do it right now. They're debating the morality of the validity of the proposal. They aren't taking issue with it on Second Amendment grounds or anything of the sort. Like Dana says, this is the Democrat Party of today. They might be a little split on the issue, but it's really all in the fiddly bits, not on the substance of the issue. So that's your Democrat Party, you know. kind of a contest. Who can say the nuttiest, far out left thing and kind of distance himself from the others? It's a real contest. So now what Beto wants to do is he wants to buy back all the assault weapons. Now, assault weapon is basically a term of art. What they mean is any kind of a rifle that has a pistol grip and a detachable magazine. That to them is an assault weapon. They don't know the difference between a semi-automatic weapon and an automatic weapon. The rifle that Uncle Herman took up to Hurley, Wisconsin to go deer hunting was a semi-automatic 30-30. According to their definition, well, he was up there with an assault weapon. It's lucky somebody didn't get killed. Well, in Uncle Herman's case, when he went up to Hurley, he very seldom got out into the woods. There are other things to do in Hurley, but that's another story. So when it comes to buying back the weapons, I have two of these really nasty questions that I have this incurable habit of asking. First of all, who's going to pay for it? You know, there are literally hundreds of thousands of weapons floating around in the United States. Who's going to pay to buy those weapons back? And then second, I have this kind of restricted edition publication here. It's something that I think the Democrats have on their obscene reading list, and they're forbidden from reading it. It's called the Constitution of the United States. And any kid that comes to school with a copy of the Constitution of the United States in his back pocket, he's in a heap of trouble, because he's going to be disciplined when he gets home. But I've been through it several times, and I don't see anything in there that gives our national government the prerogative to buy back weapons for any reason, under any circumstance. I see something that's kind of the opposite, though, and that would be the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which all of our tall tales buffs out there in the international radio listening audience are pretty familiar with, because that's how we start the show. So I've been gone for quite a while, but it's good to see that some things never change. The Second Amendment still reads the same way it did the last time I read it, and the Democrats are still acting in loony fashion. So much for the Second Amendment. Moving on now, I have a question for the real Joe Cruz. You know, one of the real key parts of Tall Tales is the contributions of our poet laureate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So have we heard from the poet laureate today, real Joe Cruz?
In fact, we did. We heard from him, and this is what he had to say.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Tall Tale folk, let's stand and cheer. Our Bob is back, and there's nothing to fear. A storm up north? It's just some rain. Now Bob is back, and we're feeling no pain. He's rolled up his sleeves like a busy beaver to work on a cure for dengue fever. A warning to those who cyber attack. Bob's on your case with a verbal whack. So it's on with the show without hesitation as we greet Bob's return with great jubilation.
Wow. Boy, that Andrew sure has a gift for words, doesn't it?
He sure does.
Yeah, he can really lay it out there. You know, he even said something about you, real Joe Cruz.
Is that right?
Yeah, here's what he said. Has anyone heard of real Joe Cruz wailing and singing the blues? He's usually quite jolly, eats a red-hot tamale, and never has he blown a fuse. That's the real Joe Cruz.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah. And it takes a lot not to blow a fuse when you're the producer for Tall Tales.
That's true.
Yeah. Not a job that everybody could handle, real Joe Cruz. Okay, so from there we go to Demi Cotney. I couldn't find my regular blue pencil. So you'll recall that Demi Cotney is our backwards bilingual play on words for Meet the Press. That's why the real Joe Cruz always plays the Meet the Press theme song there, where I take a look at the editorials from both of the newspapers, go through them with my blue pencil, checking for errors in usage and grammar, content and facts. And having done so, I would award the coveted blue star to the better of the two editorials. Sometimes, that is, if there is a degree of betterness to measure. Sometimes there's no blue star at all because neither one of them lives up to our high standards here on Tall Tales. There have been a couple occasions when I awarded 2 blue stars. Doesn't happen often, especially with the Daily News, who, rather than do homegrown editorials, seems much more adept at running stuff from USA Today, which, we can get that anywhere. The editorial function of a local newspaper is extremely important to the well-being of that community. The Post takes this very seriously. The Daily News tends to just shrug it off. So I didn't find my regular blue pencil. Something must have happened to it during my absence. I found another blue pencil, though, so we'll go forward with Zemi Ikotny. I start out with the Daily News. Here's the headline of the Daily News. Did Trump commit treason? Paul Brandis, special to USA Today. That's a real good local editorial, right? Did Trump commit treason? So they're so predictable. More often than not, they'll run something from the USA Today, and it's always a piece that bashes President Trump. So, you know, if Trump had committed treason, and if he were impeached and convicted in the Senate and removed from office, the Daily News wouldn't even be able to run the anti-Trump editorials from the USA Today because they wouldn't have anything to say. That's all they seem to be able to comment on. Okay, then we've got the Post today. Not a red letter day for the Post, but it is Monday. It's kind of hard, I think, for people in the newspaper business to have really hard-hitting stuff come out on Monday because it means they got to work hard on Sunday to get it going. And even folks in the newspaper business like to have some time off once in a while. So the Daily News, the Post editorial says, please heed safety warnings as storm system passes. I'd have never thought of that in a million years. If that weren't in the paper, in the editorial section, I would have never thought that I should pay attention to the safety warnings when there's a storm in the area. I would have just stumbled along in my usual ignorant manner, doing all kinds of dangerous things. So, Post, there is a storm in the area. It is a Monday. Here's your editorial. I can understand it, but this is not editorial. This could be something, over a crayon on the front page or something like that, in a box on the front page, but it doesn't have any editorial comment. So today, I might as well not have spent half an hour trying to find this blue pencil because I ain't going to need it. Nobody gets it today. Now, I did find a couple of interesting things as I went through some of the editorials and other materials on the editorial pages very recently. I'm going to start out with a letter to the editor that ran in the Post today from a certain Randy Cunliffe, one of the top-notch barristers on the island here. If heaven forbid that you should ever find yourself in the crosshairs of the prosecutor at the Attorney General's office, the go-to guy is Randy Cunliffe, a really good criminal lawyer. In fact, a really good lawyer, period. Former senator, partner of Jeff Cook, who has distinguished himself by assuming the mantle of first gentleman. The first gentleman. In other words, he's the husband. I guess I shouldn't be. He's the spouse.
Yes.
Yeah. I really got to work on cleaning up my language here. I almost referred to Jeff Cook. I did refer to Jeff Cook as he.
You did.
Yeah.
But it's been a while. So.
Can we go back and erase the tape? So Jeff Cook, Jeff Cook is, they are the first gentleman. They are the spouse of the governor. Yeah. So if it's a third person singular pronoun, it cannot be he or she, unless you want to have your mouth washed out with soap by somebody over there on the hard left in the Democrat Party. So here's what Randy says. Senator James Moylan has introduced legislation to roll back the GRT taxes that were not so long ago enacted. Media have recently written editorials calling for the rollback, stating that the government may have surplus money and therefore the taxes are not needed. That's exactly what happened. The position taken by the senator in the news media that the rollback will benefit consumers is totally misplaced. In 2003, the Guam legislature increased the GRT because Governor Felix Camacho requested a tax increase, although he called for a sales tax instead of a GRT. At the time, I lobbied against rolling the taxes back for the same reason I opposed the rollback this time. Well, I'm going to have to take some issue here with what Randy says. He says he lobbied. Well, he couldn't have been a lobbyist because he was a senator at that time. This was the 27th Guam legislature. There were 9 Democrats and 6 Republicans. The 9 Democrats decided that they were going to raise the GRT from 4% to 6%. As soon as a pretext arose that allowed them to back away from it, they backed away with great alacrity because they knew that it was a losing issue for them. And it turned out exactly like that because they lost the majority in the 28th Guam legislature. Some would say it was because of the increase in the GRT. So Randy didn't lobby for it. Randy was a senator at the time. So Senator, I think it's probably conceptually impossible for a senator to lobby the Senate. He could advocate with other senators, etc. I suppose I'm being my usual picky self here, picking on this vocabulary. So he says he was against rolling the tax back for the same reason he's opposed to roll back this time. He says merchants will not lower prices. If you roll back the taxes, the merchants are not going to reduce the price back 1 cent. They're going to keep it for their profit. Well, this is horrible. Those merchants keeping this money for their profit. As was seen when they rolled back the taxes before. What we have is an attempt to make the public continue to pay the same price with the profit going to the business community and not to the government. Well, any good Democrat knows that this is just horribly wrong, that the profit would go to the business that makes the profit instead of the government. What kind of a system is that? So, and Randy's right on this, that rolling back the GRT does not mean that prices are going to be dropped back to the pre-tax increase price. And I've explained that before. The only way that prices, or the way that prices go down is in accordance with various laws of economics, supply and demand being the number one rule involved. So, and the second rule is that prices are set by the market. The government tries to interfere and set prices, usually with disastrous results. So when the government raised the GRT from 4% to 5%, they were interfering with market forces because they caused an increase in the price of everything that people bought. So if you drop back to 4%, the only way that prices would drop would be if some enterprising merchant said, I can still make the necessary profit and increase my revenue by dropping my price if my competitors don't. In other words, if the market would set the price lower, it'll happen. But the fact that the government rolls back the GRT, it's not going to make it happen. But I come back to what I think is a much more important point. I want merchants to have the money. I don't want the government to have the money. I think that the people of Guam are going to make much better decisions as to how to spend their money than the government would. And we went through this this circus, this Ringling Brothers, Barnum, Bailey, and GMH circus at the legislature in order to raise the GRT. And if you'll recall, I offered a Missouri solution as a way to go about doing it. A short-term increase to get us past the choke point, coupled with a government reorganization statute. Well, the government reorganization statute passed, and the short-term increase to get us over the hump turned out to be permanent. Our governor, Leon Guerrero, when asked about lowering the tax, when the tax should be lowered, she said, I hope it's there forever. Eternity. The eternal 5% GRT. Okay, well, let me take a short break here, and then I'm going to come back to this. And I've got some interesting things on the card today. I've got the AG versus corruption. I've got Tall Tales versus corruption. I've got the Port versus Rocio, General Agagi versus sex offenders, and Therese Trelahi versus the USMC. Subtitle, How to Make a Gaffe by a Politician.
Chili's Grill and Bar is now open at the second floor of the Two Monsands Plaza.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Come and see what the buzz is all about. Grab your friends and savor their sizzling fajitas, big mouth burgers, and fall off the bone smoked ribs while sipping on their world famous Presidente margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated experience at Chili's and feel why they're like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Two Monsands Plaza. Together, we Chili's.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So I agree with Randy Cunliffe's basic point here that rolling back the GRT to 4% is not going to cause prices to drop, at least not immediately. But as a general proposition where there's competition in the marketplace, where the government doesn't put its heavy thumb on the scale, businesses attempt to cut their costs so they can be more competitive in the market. This tends to make prices go down. Now, I think there's this popular sentiment that the price a merchant charges really depends on what's in his heart. If he's a really good guy and he really likes the people, then he's not going to charge as much for his stuff or his services as if he's really greedy and just wants to make a lot of money. This is a myth. Businessmen are in business to make money. Businessmen, here I go, businessmen. Wow, can't women go into business? Business people are in business to make money. Nobody opens a business because he says, you know, if I open this business, I'm going to be able to pay a lot of taxes, and that's going to make me feel really good. So I see this fundamental flaw in what Randy is saying here, that he also goes on to say that while there may be surplus of money over and above what was budgeted, how much money does the government need to upgrade schools, upgrade roads, upgrade power by putting it underground, etc.? The government, while it may seem like a bottomless pit, still has numerous projects it must complete for the benefit of the public at large. And I say that's right. That's why we go through a budgeting process. And that's why the government has the governor has the ability to reorganize the government in order to accomplish those things without borrowing more money, without raising taxes. I don't see any effort whatsoever to go in that direction, though. So, good letter, Randy. It gives us something to think about. And once again, if there is any doubt, I'm in favor of rolling the gross receipts tax back to 4%. The gross receipts tax is a regressive tax. It hits the poorest folks in our community the hardest, the guy who spends every single cent of his income on stuff for which the merchant has to pay a gross receipts tax. So if the tax goes down, ultimately, if market forces work, the prices will go down. On the same line here, the Chamber of Commerce says senators are failing the community. Guam Chamber has expressed disappointment at the passage of the minimum wage bill. The group of business leaders has been vocal in opposing the measure. In a statement Saturday, the Chamber said the legislature is failing the community by not effectively addressing the cost of living and the cost of doing business on Guam. The organization expressed concern with the government arbitrarily increasing minimum wage by legislation, saying such action has a number of critical consequences, such as increased costs and operational expenses, which will be passed on to the consumer. The Chamber has suggested lawmakers reduce the business privilege tax from 5% to 4%, repealing Public Law 35-1, and work to reorganize the government to make it less costly. Hear, hear. Exactly. Let's make it. Let's not punish business people for being in business. Once again, when the government controls prices, it distorts market forces. I don't like to see the government control the price of anything, least of all labor. And that's where the minimum wage comes in. And I always have these same old boring questions concerning the minimum wage. If the minimum wage really works, why are we horsing around with $8.50 an hour or $9.50 an hour? Why not increase the minimum wage to $75 an hour? That way everybody could buy a new car and live really, really well if it works. And the answer to that question is it doesn't work. It tends to be injurious to the people that the politicians say that they're attempting to help. Let me see here. I can't find my my stack, Real Joe Cruz. I'll just pick it up. Good afternoon. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Hello, Bob. This is Carl.
Yeah, how you doing, Carl?
All right, welcome back.
It's good to be home, Carl.
Yeah, we've got a welcome home typhoon just for you.
Well, it's ironically, one of the places I visited on my trip was Miami, and I had to hightail it out of Miami because a hurricane was coming into town. And I thought the irony was that, I have to go all the way from here to Miami to see a typhoon. It's like we don't have enough of them here. But that's the way it goes,
I'm
right?
sensing a pattern, Bob. It's like typhoons are attracted to you. You go to Miami, there's a hurricane that comes, and you come to Guam, there's another one. So you're kind of a typhoon, you got a typhoon magnet.
Yeah, well, it all comes with the territory here. Being the host of Tall Tales, I'm bound to draw some fire from some quarter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to ask to put on your agenda the issue of, I'd like to understand more about the Commonwealth issue. As you've mentioned before, you believe that we really have only two options. One of them is separating from the United States, and the other one is building on what has gotten us this far. And one of those options, in addition to remaining an unincorporated territory, is to move to being a Commonwealth. I'd just like to know what our options are from this foundation. Where can we possibly go other than just separating from the United States?
Okay, well, let me give it 5 minutes here, Carl. A Commonwealth is not a political status. Puerto Rico is, in English, it's the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. In Espanol, it's El Estado Libre de Puerto Rico, the Free State of Puerto Rico. And in 1952, the U.S. Congress thought that they had created a new political status called Commonwealth. There was like a charter, et cetera, but the Supreme Court and a couple of decisions very recently, one dealing with double jeopardy, the other one dealing with Promesa, ruled that Puerto Rico is an unincorporated territory. The only sovereignty it has is derivative from the United States. So it's an unincorporated territory. So Commonwealth is just a word. So we could call where we want to go, we could call it a hippopotamus, and it really doesn't add much to the mix. So what I've advocated is this. The United States became a colonial power, an empire, at least in 1898 with the Spanish-American War, and I've kind of gone into that in some depth. So we are now a part of the greatest empire on earth, probably the greatest empire the world has ever seen. So one of the options is to do a Gwexit, remove ourselves, become an independent state, completely free from the United States, and take our chances. The other one is to stay where we are and attempt to work out a more, to enhance our relationship with the United States. And there are a lot of things we could do. One of the things I mentioned before is we could ask Congress to change the law so that we have our district court judge has life tenure instead of a 10-year term. We could enact our own constitution. We've had the ability to enact our own tax code since 1986. We could ask that our delegate to Congress, instead of being a delegate, be a resident commissioner, like Puerto Rico has. The resident commissioner serves for 4 years, and it's kind of a combination of Puerto Rico's person in Congress, both Senate and the House, and kind of like the ambassador to the United States. Now, I'm oversimplifying here, but these are some of the things that we could do. We could work a little bit more on our situation with cabotage and intercoastal shipping. There are a lot of things that we could do to enhance our relationship with the United States. Or we could say, we're going Gwexit. We want to be independent from the United States. So those are the only two real options. And I like the first one. The only problem with the one I like is people use the word status quo. And that, unfortunately, is a term that doesn't have much pizzazz. I've got to come up with a better terminology for the way I think we should go. I hope that helps, Carl.
Yeah, it does. Over time, I'm starting to flesh out a little better understanding of our situation and what we can do to improve on it. So actually are you saying changing the Commonwealth is completely not worth it? You wouldn't really add anything at all to what we've already got?
It's just a name. In the situation we have right now, there are political statuses. One is state. Everybody knows what a state is. Second is the District of Columbia, which is different from the states. Third is unincorporated territory. Fourth, incorporated territory, which is hardly worth discussing because it's just a historical footnote. So either you're a state or you're an unincorporated territory. Now, you can call your unincorporated territory the Republic of Hippopotamus if you want to, but it doesn't change its nature. And its nature can be found in acts of Congress. The Congress has, under Article 4, Section 3, almost completely unfettered ability to deal with the unincorporated territories of the United States. That's why in the Northern Marianas, there can be a law that says only citizens of Northern Marianas descent can own real property. A statute like that in the States would be unconstitutional. In the Northern Marianas, the one man, one vote constitutional requirement doesn't hold. Rhoda has 3 senators. Saipan in the Northern Islands has 3 senators. Not one man, one vote. So the really strong feature of the unincorporated status is that there can be variety. Guam has a different setup than American Samoa, different from Puerto Rico. It's kind of similar to Virgin Islands. But the places that we could go as an unincorporated territory are limited by our imagination and our ability to skillfully advocate where we want to go. Sitting around whining and crying about self-determination for the last 40 years don't help anybody except the industry that survives off the self-determination funds that are available through the colonizers' government.
You mentioned one time of a, I don't know if it's a territory or what its designation is. I don't know if it was American Samoa. There was something American in it, but they were actually offered American citizenship. And I was fascinated because you said they actually turned it down. And I was wondering, why in the world would they turn that down? Can you remember what you were talking about? And
yeah, that's American Samoa. And American Samoa, they don't have an organic act, but they do have a governmental system that has a two-house legislature. The upper house is made up of traditional chiefs, something that wouldn't go in a state, but it goes in American Samoa. So they are able to use their unincorporated status to, this is a biggie, to perpetuate their culture, right? A real buzzword as far as Guam's politics is concerned. Well, Neil Weir and his advocacy group filed suit to have the rule that people born in a territory of the United States are citizens of the United States by birth applied to American Samoa, like it applies here in Guam. And the government of American Samoa opposed. You know, they sided against that proposition. They didn't want to be American citizens for the reasons that I just mentioned. So that's, if it's there, that's the genius of unincorporated status, because it allows a degree of flex. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So we need to sit down. We need to do two things. We need to have a referendum that said the one question, the same proposition that was used in New Caledonia. Question: should Guam separate from the United States and be an independent sovereign country? Yes or no? We need to do that. If we did that, I wouldn't even care who voted and who didn't vote. We need to do that. And if the answer is no, then we need to sit down and figure out how to enhance our relationship with the United States, work out a strategy and tactics to get to that, to make that proposition have life. Sitting around moaning and saying, well, you know, the people of Guam have never had the opportunity for self-determination. And all of this kvetching over the years, it's a nice deal for those who are working for the government of Guam, like at the Political Status Commission and these other places that draw a salary doing it, but it doesn't do anybody else any good at all.
You mentioned several options, you know, the passing a constitution, you know, delinking from the tax code, creating a better tax code, you know, and various other things, and working on our immigration, improving our control of our immigration, our labor laws. Would I be unfair to say that we're in the position we're in primarily because our representative in the past has been too passive, and or is that on us, or is that on the United States? I mean, there's all these improvements that could have been made. I mean, everybody, I guess, is somewhat responsible, but I was wondering, where does the main responsibility lie with the fact that we find ourselves where we're at right now?
Well, it's on us. It's not on the United States. You know, you get what, in life you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And we have not gone out and attempted to negotiate for the right things. We keep playing the sympathy card over and over again, and it really never gets us anywhere at all.
So we've tried to pass the Constitution, I believe, once or twice, and it didn't go through. I mean, is it just a matter of keep going back and refining it and trying again? The
reason it didn't pass was because the Nationalists said, we can't do this. We've got to do political status first and then a Constitution. So everybody vote against the Constitution.
Oh.
Now, of course, if you're going to be an independent country, what is kind of one of the first things you need to have? And if you're really interested in statehood, which is a theoretical option available to us, The way you do it is you present your Constitution to the Congress, and if they like it, they'll introduce an enabling act, and you get to be a state. I got to go, Carl. I hear the music for the break. I'm going to come back to rewarding mediocrity.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Okay.
The current world record for longest motorcade of Nissan cars is 250, and Nissan Guam wants to smash, crash, shatter, beat that number. All Nissan owners are invited to help set a new Guinness World Record by joining our Nissan motorcade from JFK to Adelup October 13th. Any Nissan, Datsun, or Infiniti is eligible. Register at the Nissan Guam showroom and get your official motorcade bib. The first 370 entrants will get some awesome Nissan swag gear, plus a chance to win thousands in cash and prizes. Register today, and let's put Guam in the record books.
Take Care Wellness presents the 7th Save the Susu Dance Fitness Fundraiser, October 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Teason High School. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 the day of the event, and $5 for kids ages 6 to 12. Tickets are available at Take Care Wellness, Guam Cancer Care, and through Marissa Collins. Grand prize for the raffle is a round-trip ticket to Asia or Micronesia from United Airlines. All proceeds benefit Guam Cancer Care. This message is made possible by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So it's just about 4:52 here on Monday, October 7. You are listening to the top-rated FM radio talk show, afternoon radio talk show in the entire Western Pacific. So welcome aboard. I'm going to go into another one of the older editorials here from the Post, giving TACS Building E as a lesson in rewarding mediocrity. But before I do, I think I'm going to cruise through my Facebook posts here and chat it up a little bit with our international radio listening audience. So we've got Tom Tahaji's here and Pierre Tarine, Johnny Rosario. Here's what Johnny Rosario said. "Oh, how we missed you, Bob. Oh, boy. You know, I could sit around and read comments like that all day long." Well, thank you, Johnny. I've really missed doing the program here, too. You know, no matter where I was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was kind of like a magnet drawing me to the nearest facsimile to a microphone that I could grab a hold of. So, Sabina Chargaloff and Nate horns in and says, "Welcome back, Bob." And J.C. Timinglow, "Welcome back, sir." When I hear "welcome back, sir," I turn around and look and see if my Uncle Roy's standing behind me. Helen Meadowbrook, one of my favorite newspaper columnists, has been writing a column for like 20 years. Helen Meadowbrook, "My kids were so upset at 10 a.m. that Bob wasn't on air yet." So I guess it's fair to say then the Tall Tales appeals to kids, which seems right. Let's see. Nate Horn, Anita Mofness, and Ron and Cindy De La Rosa have joined. Walter Gray Jr., neither black nor white or a shade of gray, says, "Welcome back, sir." Denise Legasky, better known as Lady D, "Welcome back." And Rico Blancaflor, "Welcome back, Mr. Bob." And let's see, Tedo's here, Vivian Cunningham is here. Paz Affligui, okay, well, hello, Paz. And Nate Horn says, "Squire." Linda Gabriel and Ismail Velez are here. Albert Eliasson, a little Semper Fi from Albert. Semper Fi, back to you, Albert. Ismail Velez, welcome back. Sherry Iriarty, "Welcome back, Mr. Bob." Sonia Seelung, "Welcome back. I have missed your funny commentaries. Looking forward to my drive home today." Eddie Cruz is here. "Welcome back." Richard Wittenbach Santos says something pretty profound. He says, "Hi there." David Evans. Nate horns in again with a little onomatopoeia telling us how an automatic weapon sounds versus a semi-automatic weapon. And Nate says, this is how a semi-automatic rifle sounds. Pew, pew, pew. And here's how a fully automatic weapon sounds. Pew, 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 pew. Yeah, very good demonstration there, Nate. Chris Abalencia, Jose Martinez, Pierre comes back and says, good to see you came back charged up and ready to go. Anytime I can address Tall Tales International Radio listening audience, you better Hong Kong believe I'm charged up. And let's see, Mark Anna. Bob brought a storm with him. I probably did. I probably brought that hurricane from Miami back here with me. Simon Sanchez is here. And when? Jesse Limtiaco. Hey, Jesse Limtiaco. He's on the phone. Okay, I'll be right with you, Jesse. Lou LG voted to roll back the GRT when she was a senator. Appears she has a different mentality now. Yeah. Jeff Pleadwell. Rico Blancafor regards the buyback. Is Beto planning to pay the full price? I have a malfunctioning AR and I'm trying to get rid of it so I can buy a new one that works. Such a deal. And Mingo Ree, Elmer Dozier. Yeah, I'm not going to read. I'm not going to read what Mingo says here. Jesse again, why can't we just roll back the GRT to 0? Good idea. Nick Delgado joined. Jesse Limtiaco. Yes, just like CNMI, it's still an unincorporated territory despite the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. Mark Anna, Guam New Deal. Jesse Limtiaco, there are millions of Puerto Ricans living and many voting in the United States elections, and that has proven no help to Puerto Rico or fixing the political status of the U.S. territory. Mo Cotton is here, Shelley Gibson, Tracy Paris Limtiaco, the other Governor Leon Guerrero's on board, Carl, Shelley Gibson, Hafaday from Narita Airport. Nice to hear from home on my phone. Well, I'm glad you're listening in, Shelley. Okay, I've just got about 2 minutes here for Jesse. So, Jesse, if we don't finish everything that you want to talk about, we'll come back after the break. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's cool. Welcome back, Bob.
Well, thank you very much, Jesse.
I just wanted to say, you know, how about Guam having its constitution, its own constitution?
Yeah.
The CNMI has its own constitution, right? And I think they have one in the constitution. It says something about only natives can own land and stuff like that, right?
That's right.
Yeah, are you familiar? I think I heard somewhere that they're challenging that because it goes against the U.S. Constitution. So I just wanted to see if you know about that or how that works out, because that's if we're going to have a constitution, does it have to? How do you say this? It can't conflict with the U.S. Constitution, right?
That's correct, unless Congress wants it to.
Right. Again, everything. And at the end of the day, like you said, everything is controlled by the Congress because it's in the Constitution that the Congress controls all U.S. territories, right? Has all the powers.
That's correct. So, Jesse, I'm hearing the break music in the background, but hang on.
Okay, just want to, yeah, okay.
Hang on. I know exactly what you want to talk about, so I'll be ready to pick it up after the break, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Moving out, I'm Richard Jordan. Fox News, U.S. troops have started to withdraw from areas near the Turkish border as Turkey prepares to invade northern Syria.
That is according to the White House press secretary, who says President Trump and Turkish President Erdogan spoke Sunday. However, the White House says that U.S. troops, quote, will not support or be involved in the operation. Turkey has long been threatening an attack on Kurdish-held regions in Syria, a group that has been backed by the U.S. for some time.
Fox's Aisha Hasni, the attorney for the first whistleblower to come forward over President Trump's phone call with Ukraine's president, says a second official is ready to back up the story. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to pursue impeachment.
They suggest that by even offering the opportunity to investigate the Bidens was, in effect, asking a foreign government to dig up dirt on a political opponent. They say that is an impeachable offense, something that will obviously be the subject of much debate in the days, weeks, and months ahead.
Fox's Kevin Corke at the White House, a source in the House Democratic caucus, tells Fox News Democrats believe they have the votes to impeach. Former President Jimmy Carter has a black eye and several stitches after falling at his home in Georgia. He still managed to make it to a Habitat for Humanity event in Tennessee later in the day. Carter turned 95 last Tuesday. Comedian Rip Taylor died. Taylor was known for his shaggy blonde toupee, bushy mustache, and confetti throwing. He hosted a game show called the $1.98 Beauty Show, which parodied beauty pageants.
Yes, sir, the $1.98 Beauty Show will be bringing you tons of talented and beautiful women every single week. Happy women, terrified women, women singing and dancing and braiding about in the latest bathing suit.
Taylor first worked as a congressional page before serving in the Army during the Korean War, where he began doing stand-up. He was 84 years old. America's listening to Fox News.
When you think about better water, think Kinetico softened water. Kinetico water conditioners work like no other, supplying a continuous flow of luxuriously soft water without disruption and without use of electricity. After all, better water flows from better thinking. Kinetico.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water. Call American Water Tech at 649-2301 or email info@americanwatertech.com.
Take Care Wellness presents the 7th Save the Susu Dance Fitness Fundraiser, October 19 from 6 to 8 p.m. at Teason High School. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 the day of the event, and $5 for kids ages 6 to 12. Tickets are available at Take Care Wellness, Guam Cancer Care, and through Marissa Collins. Grand prize for the raffle is a round-trip ticket to Asia or Micronesia from United Airlines. All proceeds benefit Guam Cancer Care. This message is made possible by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Police in Kansas are looking for the individuals involved in a Sunday morning bar shooting that left 4 people dead.
As of right now, police do not believe this was a random shooting. They're looking for possibly 2 shooters at this time. The shooting happened at the Tequila KC bar located along a strip of businesses. A spokesperson for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department tells me detectives are reviewing surveillance video. They're trying to confirm whether more than one shooter was involved and figure out what the motive possibly could be. Police were called out to the small bar. They believe 2 patrons may have left the bar and returned to open fire.
Fox's Christina Coleman. A homeless man confessed to beating 4 other homeless men to death in New York City. Prosecutors say 24-year-old Randy Santos came clean when he was shown video of the attacks. Police say Santos used a 15-pound piece of construction metal to kill his victims. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame drummer Ginger Baker has died.
He was the drummer for Cream, the 60s Brit band considered by many as the first supergroup. The talented trio starred Eric Clapton on guitar, Jack Bruce on bass, and Ginger Baker on drums. His showcase piece, Toad, was one of rock's first extended drum solos. Though he styled himself a jazz drummer, Peter Edward Baker was born in London in 1939. The red-headed Ginger provided the beat behind Cream's biggest hits like Crossroads and Sunshine of Your Love. Cream broke up in 1968 and entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Baker's family says he passed away peacefully in a British hospital Sunday morning. Ginger Baker was 80. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
Astronauts completed the first in a series of spacewalks replacing old batteries at the International Space Station. The new batteries are expected to last until the end of the space station's life. Astronauts will venture back out Friday for more battery work. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Want 10% off your next flight to the U.S.? Now through October 31, receive 10% off select United Airlines flights to the U.S. when you purchase your ticket with your United credit card or United Mileage Plus credit card from First Hawaiian Bank. Use promo code FHB019 when booking your flight. With a travel sale like this, you could wake up to a different sunrise in any part of the U.S. Visit FHB.com/United Fair Sale 19 to learn more. Terms and conditions and restrictions apply. First Hawaiian Bank, member FDIC.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake.
Get the latest updates as Blake and Mike break down the upcoming action. Get your game on with the boys on the hotline, 888-TALK, or sound off on Facebook Live at thepoint.gu. League members get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on the Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam with special thanks to GTA.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
That halftime show is just as dramatic as it was the last day I was here, Real Joe Cruz. You've really done a good job of keeping up the high standards of the halftime show. Very good. Okay, so I don't see Jesse on the line. Jesse, I hope you can dial back in because I'm going to go ahead and answer your questions. But we can chat about it a little bit if you want to dial back in. Jesse was referencing the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas. And once again, just to make it really clear, the word Commonwealth doesn't lead you very far. Massachusetts is a Commonwealth. It's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Kentucky is a Commonwealth. The Commonwealth of Kentucky. There's a Commonwealth of Virginia. So the Commonwealth of Kentucky, as far as its relationship with the rest of the states and with the central government, is no different than the state of Tennessee. So adding the word Commonwealth doesn't really change anything. And as I explained with respect to Puerto Rico, it didn't change much of anything there either. And the same is also true of the Northern Marianas. Okay, Jesse, so you're back. So I'm going to launch into your question, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, you know, we could have named it any one of a number of things. We could have called it to something like the Autonomous Region of the Northern Marianas, borrowing something from the old Soviet Union. It's not what you call it that counts. It's what the elements are. So as far as the Northern Marianas are concerned, there is a document called the Covenant between the United States and Northern Marianas. And that allowed certain things to be inserted in the Northern, in fact, it almost required the land tenure provision to be inserted in the Commonwealth Constitution. So there is a provision in the Commonwealth Constitution that said that only citizens of Northern Marianas descent, and that means basically Chamorros and Carolinians born on any one of the islands in the Northern Marianas, only citizens of Northern Marianas descent can own fee title to real property. Everybody else, long-term lease, and that's the best you could do. And there's another provision that provision wouldn't pass muster in any one of the states, and it wouldn't pass muster in Guam under our Organic Act. There's another provision that says that the Northern Mariana Senate has 9 members, 3 from Rota, 3 from Tinian, 3 from Saipan and the Northern Marianas. Well, almost all the people in the Northern Marianas are in Saipan, but the people in Rota have as much representation in the Senate as the people from Saipan.
Right.
So this would not pass muster under in the state either, because it is violative of the so-called one man, one vote rule. But because the Northern Marianas is an unincorporated territory, it can be done. And the same thing, and then you also asked about challenges. Both the land tenure provision and the representation in the Senate were challenged. They both went to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit upheld both of those mechanisms. And once again, Article 4, Section 3 gives the Congress plenary power to make needful rules and regulations for the territories.
Exactly, right.
So the same thing is true here. It just that we haven't asked for the right needful rules and regulations. Instead of doing that, my sense is that we're too busy complaining about not being able to choose our political status, as though that was ever an option, ever available to anyone on Guam. And I would add parenthetically, what a shock it was for me, when I woke up in my early 20s and I figured I'll never get a chance to vote on my political status because that was settled, way back in the 1700s.
Right.
So does that answer your question, Jesse?
Yeah. I just needed some clarification, or your on how if Guam did have a constitution, I mean, why couldn't we just have one like Saipan? You know what I mean? That's basically what I was trying to.
Because Saipan has the covenant, which is analogous. We'd have to have congressional authority to do some of those things.
That's what I was but Saipan wasn't it wasn't ceded to the U.S. by Spain, right? They were under that trust or something like that.
The trust territory.
Right.
Yeah.
So they had like almost a different. They were part of like FSM and all those other guys, right?
They weren't part of the FSM when.
I mean, they weren't part of it, but they were part of that trust. Almost had a trusteeship or something, right?
After World War II, the United States created the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands for all of the islands that had been under Japanese control from 1914 to the end of the World War II, and Saipan was there. So the United States negotiated what amounted to treaties with the Northern Marianas, with Palau, with the Marshalls, and with the FSM.
And Germans had control over Saipan at one point, right?
In 1898, after United States Guam took Guam from Spain, Spain sold the rest of the islands to Germany because without Guam, Spain didn't figure it would be a viable proposition, so sold them to Germany. In 1914, when World War I broke out, the Japanese sided with the Allies, declared war on Germany, moved in and took the German Pacific territories as their own.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up, and maybe we could maybe Guam needs to look at the making our own constitution, but I just don't know how we're going to do that unless Congress allows us to do that, and and if they do allow Guam to do that, will it include everybody on Guam, or just again the natives, whoever's before 1950 or whoever's living here during or descendant of those that in 1898 or whatever when the.
My sense is that Congress could do it however it wanted to.
Right. Okay. All right, Bob. Thanks a lot, and welcome back. Yeah.
Okay, it's good to be back, Jesse. Thanks for calling. Okay, so I was talking about giving Guam Academy Charter Schools building E as a lesson in rewarding mediocrity. GACS has been a disaster from the very beginning. It's not accredited. It's gotten every break. And now, you know, when they were allowed to use part of the buildings at TGen, when John Fernandez said he needed the rest of that building for the Guam public school system, GAC objected. According to the paper, Lou Leon Guerrero said, well, you two guys work it out. It didn't happen. So Lou not only gave it all to GAC, but she dissed John Fernandez in the process, wrote a letter with some very patronizing language in it, and said, now maybe you could sublease from GAC. That's really, really something. And so what it amounts to is other charter schools have their own property. They have to pay rent or buy or whatever. GAC gets government property for nothing. The editorial here, it makes some mistakes, and I think I need to go into this. Charter schools are typically operated by nonprofit organizations, are allowed to do things like raise funds and enter into lease agreements, things that Guam Department of Education can't do as a public entity. These allowances help ensure that charter schools are not dependent on GovGuam for all their operational costs. It makes sense because if a charter school were totally dependent on GovGuam for all its funding and facilities, then it would be just another public school and should be folded into the public school system. Further stressing the need for charter schools to create some level of autonomy and independence, there are things DOE is required to do that aren't required of charter schools, like work with a teachers union. I don't know where the editorial writer gets off with these things. I don't read the law as saying that. But the editorial says work with a teachers union, pay teachers legislatively approved wages, and require teachers to be certified. Well, the Every Child Act requires that every child is entitled to an adequate public education. So charter schools are public schools of a little bit different stripe, so they're entitled, kids that go there are entitled to an adequate public education. That means certified teachers. These requirements affect overall operational costs, and freedom from them allows charter schools more flexibility in how they run their schools and what the overall costs amount to. Additionally, GACS is the oldest charter school on island, having opened in 2013. By law, a charter school must be accredited within 5 years of operation. GAC remains unaccredited. Meanwhile, other younger charter schools have located and are operating on their own facilities and are also on track for accreditation within the deadline, and so on and on. A companion piece here is Judy Wanpat, who now is the principal of the charter schools, defending the free lease for charter schools. I won't spend too much time with this. But she doesn't say anything that's very noteworthy. The idea behind charter schools was that it would allow the operators of the charter schools to establish curricula that would be different from that mandated by the public, by the school board, and it ought to allow for a variety in education that a megalithic system like Guam Public School System can't allow for. It hasn't worked out that way because it looks like just more of the same old thing. Guam Academy Charter Schools gets free use of a government building, rent-free. Its principal is Judy Wanpat, a lifelong political animal. What party is Judy Wanpat, would we connect her with? Oh, I think she's a Democrat. Yeah, and there are a couple of other interesting things. Guam Academy Charter School has a lawyer, a certain Jackie Terlahi, who worked this out with the governor. And Jackie Terlahi is a key member in a religious organization here on the island that may have been an ally of Lou and Josh in their campaign for governor. Maybe not. I don't know. But none of this looks very good. None of it looks good at all. I've always been in favor of charter schools, decentralization, etc. But something like GAC just tends to spoil it for everybody else because they have tripped over themselves so many times. And now, as the Post editorial says, giving GACS Building E is a lesson in rewarding mediocrity. I don't think that they even rise to the level of mediocrity, but that's just me. Okay, so from there we go to the card. And as I mentioned, I've got some interesting things on the card. I've got the Attorney General versus corruption. I've got Tall Tales versus corruption. I've got the Port of Guam versus Rocio. I've got General Agagi versus sex offenders. And Therese Trelawney versus the United States Marine Corps. So there was a story in the Post that the AG was mum on governor's call to combat corruption. Now, I think everybody who has been awake for the last few days knows where we are with potential corruption here, where an FBI agent testified at the hearing for the mayor of Jonia and said some really shocking things, that the mayor of Jonia has cronies in law enforcement, that he could fix people getting out of jail, being released from prison. Just a lot of rather untoward comments concerning the court, the marshals at the Superior Court, police officers, the mayor, and a few others. Snow White and a couple of the dwarfs, I think, were mentioned in there. And so the governor wrote to the Attorney General and says, hey, look, jump in here, will you? This doesn't look good. We need to restore credibility. And the story in the Post, one of the subheadings, AG's campaign trail promise, I'll tackle corruption. Though Guam's AG has yet to officially respond to the governor's request, Camacho, during his campaign for office, promised to tackle government corruption and restore the island's faith in the government. There's no doubt that these are troubling times, the stories of government corruption making the headlines almost daily, Camacho said in a June 4, 2018 story in the Post. Our government must act to protect the interest of our people and not solely individuals in positions of power. Prior to his win, he said he believed the time was right to run for the highest elected legal office in the government because the people's faith in government must be restored, and the Attorney General's office is key to making that happen. The Office of Attorney General has not responded to the Post request for comment on the governor's call to action. So there you go with the Attorney General and his posture on corruption. So I've got Jay on the line, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, Jay.
Hi, Bob. Welcome back.
It's always good to be home, Jay.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that a couple of things that, so the idea is that you had a replacement that Carol did a very good job while you were gone.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
But
not so good, though, that people want me to stay away, I hope.
No, nowhere near. So what I wanted to call about was the fact that there was an unintended consequence when they passed Article 14 in Saipan. And this is taking you back to the prior conversation.
Okay.
We were involved in the examination of the impact of ownership of land, specifically by residents or of citizens of the Northern Marianas as they defined it. And the problem is that over time, people keep land as a asset that they want to pass on to their children. Well, as their children began to mature, they had the ability to marry into Filipino and Caucasian, Japanese, and even Chinese families. Got to the point that folks that were originally thinking that they would be able to pass on their land to their progeny now could not, because they did not have sufficient level of local ownership. In other words, they didn't meet the criteria for what qualifies as a CNMI citizen.
The blood test.
The blood test was something that kept them from achieving a goal that they had originally from acquiring and passing on the land. And so there was a strong desire to change the law because on the corporate side, there were complex legal structures that were created that allowed foreign entities to control the land as if they owned it, but they would own it under long-term leases and would have the ability to act as if they were actually owning it, but the folks that was intended to benefit were left out.
Right.
So I think it's important that people understand that that provision has with it an unintended consequence that folks should consider. And it comes with the fact that the idea of having Americans own land and being able to sell it to whomever they want is a right that they should treasure and one that they should preserve.
I couldn't agree more, Jay. You know, when the whole discussion concerning fee simple title and citizens in Northern Mariana's Descent came up, I didn't even need to get far into the question because my policy orientation is that the free alienability of real property is absolutely essential to the functioning of any community. And I think that the Northern Marianas proves that point.
Absolutely. And now they have a pickle. It's a situation where many residents, many landowners are opposed to the concept. And of course, it's inhibiting economic development. So the entire policy objective has failed.
Yes. So often the government in searching out the political target that would seem to be one that they wanted to pander to winds up hurting the people that they're purporting to help.
That's correct. And so a temporal fix to what is viewed as an important political situation could end up with a permanent problem.
Yeah. Yeah, very good analysis, Jay. Thank you for sharing that with our Tall Tales International Radio listening audience.
Well, it's good to have you back, Bob.
Thanks again, Jay.
Okay.
So long. Okay, and I guess you finally got around to opening up the Tom line, huh?
Yes, sir.
Here it is, 27 minutes after 5, and I haven't had a call from a Tom yet. Of course, I haven't said anything about animals, so that kind of limits the desirability of making a call to our Tom, right? Good afternoon, our Tom.
Good afternoon, Carter. Welcome back. I mean, Bob.
Okay, it's good to be home, Tom.
In relation to the previous gentleman's call right before me, Hawaii also has the same policy when it comes to fee simple land, just like the CNMI. Because my cousin just came for a visit and she bought a house in Hawaii, and on the title that they gave her after she paid off the house, it only states that she only owns the house. She doesn't own the lot where the house is sitting on. They told her that she's been leasing that land, and she wasn't aware that part of the mortgage payment for the house is the part of it is the lease of the lot. So they never owned the land. They said they can lease it for 99 years. Just like what the Tomorrow Renters is doing, but they will never own the land. They only own the house that they bought. And if they anticipate dying, they have to make a transfer to a qualified descendant of his or her, of the owner, to take over the lease, provided that the person taking over is qualified also. So they can keep living on that land as long as it don't belong to them.
Well, there are a lot of communities where long-term leases are more common than fee simple title ownership, especially in urban areas. You'll find that a long-term lease, like a 99-year lease, is sometimes more common than ownership. Now, Actually, I don't think that the person that you're talking about can even own the house, because once you build a structure on land, the structure becomes a part of the real property, unless it's something like a modular or something that you can pick up and wheel away. But, you know, the fact that it is a long-term lease is not unusual, and that's why when people buy real property, probably not a bad idea to have a lawyer take a look at the documents to make sure that you're buying what you think you're buying.
Yeah. Anyway, before I let you go, sir, do you have a minute to talk national politics?
I can squeeze you in, I guess, Tom. You're a kind of a charter member of the Tall Tales International radio listening audience, so certain privileges come with that.
I don't know why your friend Pencilneck from California is just trying to impeach our friend, the president, whom they were saying he did a quid pro, how do you pronounce that? Quid pro quo thing, you know, it's Latin for what for what or this for that, right?
Right.
When almost every president has done it. That's what Obama did when he was president. He made a deal with Iran that if you stop your atomic bomb research for at least 15 years, we'll give you $150 billion. So they agreed. So that's why Iran got $150 billion, because they agreed to stop their atomic bomb research. So, and also we've been doing that with North Korea, that if they stop their atomic bomb research, they will also get American aid. Isn't that also quid pro quo? Oh, I'm mispronouncing that, but isn't that the same thing, though?
It's pretty close.
What they're accusing Trump of doing with Ukraine?
Yeah, well, let's just examine pencil neck for a moment here. For those who are not fully acquainted with pencil neck, we're talking about Congressman Adam Schiff, who has put Donald Trump's name on the top of the Schiff list from the very day that Trump won the election. And Schiff is not unlike an awful lot of other Democrats who are still saying Trump should never have been president. He didn't get the most popular votes. Hillary did. It was Hillary's turn. Hillary should have been president. We don't like Donald Trump because he's not a member of the club. He has not come up through the political ranks like the rest of us. He doesn't play the political game the same way that we do. So we think he should be impeached. And I got out the... I looked in once again, this magic book called the Constitution that says that the grounds for impeachment are high crimes and misdemeanors. But when Adam Schiff reads the Constitution, he's got a different version than mine. His version says grounds for impeachment are high crimes, misdemeanors, and a crappy personality. So Donald has a crappy personality, and therefore, obviously, he should be impeached.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, they're crazy. All the Democrats in Congress are just going crazy. But anyway, they should be prosecuting Joe Biden also for doing exactly that. He was even quoted on TV that he withheld the money from the Ukraine because they're investigating his son for one of the dealings that he had with the Ukrainian gas company.
So when it comes to crappy personalities, Joe is right up there with everybody else, because he not only did it, he was benedoso about it. He bragged about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went in there and I said, "You want that money? Well, then you better replace that prosecutor." Oh, 6 hours later, guess what? They did. So he's bragging about it.
Yeah. On national television, he was bragging about it.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob.
Good.
Thanks, and welcome back, my friend.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Tom. Thanks for calling.
All right, bye.
Okay, so let's see. 5:30, we're coming up to seventh inning stretch, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I wonder whatever happened to Jack Haddock.
Yeah. He might be on an episode of Where Are They Now?
The last time I saw his name in the paper, it was Pilar or Pika Fair and Malalaki Sidzak night.
Yeah.
That was the last time he made the paper, so maybe we'll give him a pass today.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
John C. Maxwell headlines the 2019 Live to Lead Guam Conference coming on November 7th. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll again tap into his ocean of wisdom.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Try their featured special for October. 3 cups chicken, an iconic Taiwanese dish. Boneless chicken sauteed with ginger, chilies, star anise, scallions, basil, green beans, and a sweet soy mixture. Served with your choice of starch. Visit Mezcla in Agotnya and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
So here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago. 7th inning stretch, one of the traditions here on Tall Tales, right along with that big halftime show that we started as we were 1700 every afternoon. So that means I've got about, 37, it's 5:37. So I got about 23 more minutes here until we'll be listening to Bolero, which means I can listen to the radio myself. But in the meantime, I have a phone call here from someone that, we don't cotton to certain kinds of callers here on Tall Tales. There are some things, people who are rude or inappropriate or uninformed. We just don't cotton to every caller that calls in. But this guy is an exception. We always cotton to Mo, don't we, Mo?
Well, you're putting me in that category of being a bad caller.
No, I'm saying we do cotton to you. Others we don't cotton to.
Okay, well, I want to welcome you back, my good Marine compadre. And I did back in the 90s. I did a lot of investing over in Rhoda, and so I was pretty familiar with that. Compact?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it was pretty great for people, Americans living over there. They didn't have to pay taxes. They could import practically slave labor. And they had all kinds of really neat things, and I dug into that a little bit with some of my friends over there. One of the problems that they had was that they were using. They thought the smart ones thought they were being smart, and they'd use a straw buyer. They'd use a Chamorro to buy the property that the Hilton or the Hyatt or what's another big one over there, would go on, and that was challenged by somebody. You remember all that?
Oh, yeah.
That was quite something then. millions of dollars invested over there just got crippled, including me. I had bought a bunch of waterfront property on Rhoda, and I even had a buyer. It was one of the big hotels over here was going to buy it, and as soon as that law was challenged and upheld, I really pulled out. And so I said, no, that's no problem. Somebody else will buy it. And here I am, 20, 30 years later, waiting for someone to buy some of the stuff I got over there. Anyway, I asked this gentleman, why did the United States agree to that compact? It's pretty open-ended and very nice for you guys. He said the one reason is that they wanted eminent domain. As long as the eminent domain was in there, then they could have anything they want.
Okay.
So that's my smart comment for the day.
Well, I appreciate your insights, Mo. I know when it comes to peddling dirt, you're an expert, right?
Well, not an expert anymore. I've forgotten a lot of that stuff, but I still have a real estate school, and I can't, that way I have to keep up myself.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you called in and shared your experience with us in Northern Mariana. And it reminded me of something else, you know. In the beginning, U.S. labor laws didn't apply in the Northern Marianas.
Right.
And, of course, U.S. taxes, in effect, don't, because they have the same situation that we do, but almost all of the taxes paid were rebated back to the taxpayer. So, you know, it was a real free enterprise haven, which, unfortunately, the local folks didn't take as much advantage of as folks from China.
Yeah, the feds came in and finally knocked them down. The textile, the sweater companies, and all that stuff. But it just killed Saipan. And as I understand now, they're going through some real recession or depression over there again.
Well, they put all their chips on that casino, and then the typhoon came along and really knocked the casino down. So, you know, there's just no easy way of doing these things. David Ricardo's law of comparative advantage, you can get around it for a little while, but sooner or later it catches up with you. You could raise bananas in Alaska and salmon in Peru. You raise bananas in Manhattan if you wanted to, but it's not. It doesn't build stable economies, and that was the problem with Saipan. Saipan is not a good place to manufacture garments.
Well, they had a few.
They did.
And they were making lots of money because they could pay their workers practically nothing.
And the government paid Jack Abramoff $9 million to keep the feds away. In fact, Abramoff got his start. His first big client was the Northern Marianas, and he went on from there to a lot of other things.
Well, anyway, welcome back. I just wanted to call in on your first day back and say we missed you, and looking forward to all the days in the future here.
Well, thank you very much, Mo. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for calling.
And have a happy birthday when that rolls around.
You won't forget it, will you?
No.
Okay, so long.
Okay.
Okay, Mo Cotton, realtor here on the island, dirt peddler, as it were. So from there, let's see, we talked about the AG and corruption, and a kind of related story here is that the AG is down 6 lawyers from January. And there's a story here in the Post about how many resigned and how many were hired, et cetera. And I suppose if one were to press the issue, well, you know, we're shorthanded, so we can't do this corruption thing. And I would be willing to give the Attorney General a little bit of slack on that because you got to have lawyers if you're going to prosecute people. And let's see, I've got I got Jack of all trades on the line, huh? Good afternoon, Jack.
Hey, good evening there, Bob. Welcome home.
It's good to be home, Jack.
Yeah, I'm on the road right now, and I'm a little bit confused here about the cores. Are we still using core? I thought we did away with core and went to CAMP, the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. But I'm still hearing core.
You know a whole lot more about it than I do, Jack, which is not unusual.
No, because I was just wondering because in an article back in 2000, I think 17 or 16, someone was mentioning that all these core readiness isn't codified into Guam law, and I was kind of surprised when I heard that, and I was wondering if you recall how does core fit into Guam law? Is it fit in? Is it in public law anywhere? Or is it...
I don't think so, Jack. I think it would be seen as, in the absence of statute, a common executive function.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then, like I said, I was kind of really confused about things because ever since the establishment of FEMA, they wanted all state and territory agencies to come up with a comprehensive plans in times of emergency, such as typhoons. And Guam never had one, or they were in the midst of making one. And when they came up with this comprehensive emergency management plan, it was supposed to be superimposed over core. In other words, we're not supposed to be using core anymore. There's supposed to be guidelines on how shelters are to be handled. There's supposed to be guidelines. Who's in charge? Is it the mayor, or is it like you said, an executive function that's headed over to Guam Homeland Security, or even problems with letting people into the shelters. I mean, you don't want violent criminals in with families. So I'm just a little bit confused. I know these subjects don't come up often. It's just when we're in the middle of something happening that someone says, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And so I'm like on my way home, and I'm just I said, are we just playing this by ear, or are there really policies in place that's supposed to be put into force as soon as something is like a core condition is? But now that you explained that it is an executive thing, well, it really doesn't explain much.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the subjects like the condition of readiness and those things, I used to understand it, but then when they got fancy and started changing it all the time and adding stuff to it, I don't know jack about it anymore, Jack.
Yeah, I used to rely on the phone book. You know, the phone book, you would have the emergency stuff in the front of the phone book.
Yeah.
The real phone book that you get in case of trouble, earthquake or typhoon or tsunami or something. They had all those things in the phone book that you could refer. Now I don't even think I got a phone book. So I was just curious about this because I think it's an important question, because in your world of accountability, especially when it comes to the release of funds, you need to know what triggers these things. You don't want money disappearing out, like someone opened up the window during the typhoon and all the paperwork went out. You want to have some sort of a reliable SOPs, standard operation procedures, in which us in the public can feel safe. And I don't know, man. This is like a storm coming, but it's like we're playing it by ear again.
Well, thanks a lot for your observation, Jack. And as usual, you know Jack about this subject, so thanks for calling.
Well, welcome home, Bob.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, so that's the guy who once in a while calls me up and tells me I don't know jack about what I'm talking about. Anyhow, thanks a lot for calling, Jack. So I was talking about the AG being down 6 lawyers, and this perhaps having some impact on the AG's ability to tackle official corruption. And I do have some interesting personnel observations to make about the Attorney General's office. First of all, James Canto is now working at the Attorney General's office. James Canto, former judge of the Superior Court of Guam. Yeah.
Wow. How does that happen?
Yeah, well, he resigned and he took off for someplace, and now he's back working at the Attorney General's office. And then when I was thinking about the personnel situation at the Attorney General's office, I went into my closet and got out my crystal ball and gazed into it. And this is what I saw. A certain attorney in the Attorney General's office whose name was mentioned quite prominently a couple months ago concerning a fracas with a certain Gary Gumatautau may be on the job market very soon, like tomorrow. Yeah, so that would be Attorney Dave Highsmith. So, guy who's been with the Attorney General ever since. Very strange situation. You know, you know somebody for a long time, and you kind of have a sense of how they would react in a particular situation. And what I read in the paper about Highsmith and Gumatautau just seemed to be totally out of character for the way Highsmith ordinarily goes about things. But anyhow, we'll find out more about it very soon, I think. We haven't found out anything about the special prosecutor that the Attorney General was going to employ concerning any potential prosecution in that matter. Okay, so we're coming up on the home stretch here, so short break, and then we're going to go to Churchill Downs for the home stretch, and we'll talk about tall tales versus corruption.
Life happens. You need to go to work. The kids need to go to school. There are family events, friend events, any event, and everyone needs to communicate. When you need mobile services that you know you can rely on, choose GTA. As the winner of Ookla's 2019 award for Best Mobile Coverage on Guam, you can rely on us to offer you better plans to modernize your life, fit your needs, and keep you connected. So visit us today and let us help you connect. GTA, we start with you.
It's a one-of-a-kind wine fundraiser. Guahan Sustainable Culture presents Wine in the Garden. The Hamamoto Gardens help support food sovereignty, security, and sustainability while sipping wines from around the world, surrounded by 50-some acres of beautiful farm and garden. Tickets are $75 each. Proceeds support education and outreach on how important, easy, and fun sustainable practices can be. Wine in the Garden is on Saturday evening, October 26, starting at 5. For more details, go to our website, gusustainable.org, or call 687-6491.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are, the home stretch of Tall Tales for Monday, the 7th of October. So we're watching the horses herded into the starting gate at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. You heard the call to the post, and they're off. And in about 7.5 minutes, I'll be off, and so will the real Joe Cruz. So we're going to take it down to the end of the program here, probably talking about tall tales versus corruption. Now, that question has popped up here on Facebook more than once, where people are like, well, Bob, what do you think? Do we have corruption in the government of Guam? And people voicing various opinions, etc. Here it is. Former DPW manager moves to port. Truck follows him. In January, Dominic Munia left the Department of Public Works as the building maintenance manager, earning $60,000 a year. He soon started working at the port, where he serves as the deputy manager of operations, making $134,314 a year. That's a pretty good-sized jump, more than double. And we can't even blame it on the mayor's council or the CCU this time around. Yeah, it's a huge jump in pay. So I wonder what made him twice as valuable to the port as he was at Public Works? Or was the Public Works Department, was Public Works just so mosquito that they're getting a $134,000 employee and only paying him $60,000? Government should do something about that. Anyhow, he wound up at the port at $134,314 a year. Soon after, a white 2008 Ford 350 truck with license plate number 5908 was transferred from DPW to the Port Authority. Documents obtained through the Freedom of Information Act request show the vehicle was transferred on January 22, not long after the election, from the Building Maintenance Division to the Port Authority's Operations Division. The vehicle is 11 years old. It's not like it's a brand new vehicle. They really didn't want to spend more money on it, so they offered to transfer it over to the port. So it's been officially transferred, Munoz said. Now, that everything that Munoz said here is true and completely irrelevant. He might as well have said, you know, that truck needed an oil change and it needed new windshield wipers. So it's okay, you know. Munoz said he drives the truck, which he says has the proper signage on it required of a 24-hour vehicle. Now, that suggests to me that Munoz drives the truck back and forth to work. Come payday, jump in the truck and take his check down to the bank and cash it, right? So I would just stop here and say, you know, if a guy's making $134,314 a year, couldn't he drive his own car to work? By giving him that 11-year-old truck, in effect, you're increasing his salary by a couple, $2,000 or $3,000 a year, because he's going to take it to the government gas station. He's not going to be buying gas. He's not going to be paying car payments. He's not going to be paying for an insurance policy, etc. This is corruption. This is corruption. People who work for the government of Guam should get to work on their own. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, and that would be this. If a vehicle that is assigned to a government employee who would be called out after regular hours, and he needs that vehicle in order to perform his function, then I could see him taking it home. But, you know, how much of a car do you need to drive around the port? You know, it's not exactly a high mileage area. So why does this guy need a car? Why do we have to pay for his car? When asked how many people in management team have a 24-hour vehicle, Port General Manager Rory Respicio said 3. The harbor master, now the harbor master has to have a government car, right? In order to drive around the no, you don't drive around the and this is what it comes down to. So the harbor master sometimes probably going to get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Does it matter? And he's got to come to the port. Does it matter if he gets there in his own car or in a government? It doesn't make any difference at all. This is just fluff. It's a classic case of fraud, waste, and abuse. So where's our ethics commission now that we really need them? Where's our attorney general? You know, this. And here's something else that it's pretty important here. There's a huge risk for government employees to be driving government vehicles on personal business. One, your own car insurance policy is not going to cover you because you're not a named additional driver, or that vehicle is not a named additional vehicle. 2, the Claims Act is not going to cover you because you're not conducting government business. So if you get in an accident, it's on you, folks. I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about this tomorrow, is this kind of corruption. But as it is, I hear that song playing in the background. It's the end of another perfect day here on Tall Tales. So glad to be back chatting with all of you out there in our international radio listening audience. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam.